Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Should You Play, where I show you some spoiler-free gameplay and give you my thoughts after playing new games for a few hours, while also highlighting and checking out at least one of the PlayStation Plus games for each month. In this video I'm playing one of the March 2025 PlayStation Plus games, Dragon Age: The Veilguard, the fourth major game in the Dragon Age franchise which released in late 2024. Dragon Age: The Veilguard spent nearly a decade in development, undergoing numerous delays, name changes, and resource shifts to other projects. And as time went by, fans started to get nervous due to the lackluster reception to their more recent titles such as Anthem and Mass Effect Andromeda. The game's been out for a little over 4 months now, and I know some fans of the franchise are a little unhappy with how it ended up, but talking as someone who hasn't played any of the other Dragon Age games and loved the Mass Effect ones, the game is solid. It's not amazing, it's not bad, it's just good, so let's talk about why.
Well then, let's get going.
Shifting from the grander storylines of the previous titles, The Veilguard puts you in the boots of Rook, a customizable hero tasked with helping Varric and his allies in an effort to stop Solus from causing a disaster, only to set off a chain of events that leads to even bigger problems.
The plan did go a little wrong.
It's a familiar Dragon Age story that uses elements, characters, and lore from the previous installments, but the game was designed to be accessible to newcomers, so you won't be left catching up on volumes of Dragon Age history if you haven't played any of them before.
It's a lot to take in.
That said, longtime fans may feel that the game loses some of its bite, because even though the overarching plot is still about a world-ending event, the political intrigue that defined the earlier entries in the series is replaced with a more character-centric narrative that leans heavily into personal relationships and emotional beats. I don't think this shift is necessarily a bad thing though, as it gives the story a more intimate personal touch, but I know it's something that some Dragon Age fans weren't entirely thrilled with.
Harsh, but fair.
The characters themselves are likable enough, with most of them being new to the franchise, alongside some returning faces such as Varric, Harding, and Lady Morrigan.
'Tis simply Morrigan to you, Scout Harding.
The expected BioWare relationship systems and dialogue wheel are present as well, letting you grow closer to certain characters and shape Rook's personality based on the type of character you want to play. However, the choices don't feel very impactful overall, as Rook is kind of presented as a decent person no matter what you do.
Well, that's awkward.
You can be nice to nice people and rude to those you don't like, but it doesn't seem to make a huge difference in how people treat you later on, with the exception of a few interactions and binary decisions as you continue to play.
I am, after all, remembered as the god of lies, treachery, and rebellion.
Dragon Age: The Veilguard is a fantasy RPG with everything you'd expect from one. You explore the world, gather loot, fight enemies, and build a party as you work toward your goal of preventing devastation. You start off by creating your version of a Rook in a fairly robust character creator, picking their appearance, class, backstory, and faction, and then get thrown straight into the action.
So, naturally, our story begins where all great stories begin. With the seediest bar in town.
If you've played any of the BioWare games before, you won't be surprised to see that it's equal parts exploration, combat, conversation, and cutscene, letting you really immerse yourself within the world, and the places you visit are all fantastic looking. From the forest and refugee camps, to the bigger cities and more otherworldly locations. Exploration is also encouraged, as you'll often find hidden chests or rewards, and navigation is smooth, with clear pathways as well as waypoints and a minimap to guide you through the environments. The combat of the Veilguard leans heavily into real-time action, unlike the more tactical approach of Inquisition or Origins, which, for someone who's played the Mass Effect games extensively, isn't a big deal, and I actually really like the combat system. Playing as a mage, I had access to elemental and ranged attacks, and there's an ability wheel where you can pause action and command your allies, in addition to being able to dodge, block, and use free aim abilities as well. There's also a really extensive skill tree, and yeah, some of the skills you unlock are just little buffs, like a boost to your mana or physical resistance, but others will unlock awesome new abilities, such as meteors or chain lightning.
Take this shot!
Additionally, you're able to customize gear using the transmog system at the in-game hub, meaning you can equip your strongest weapons and armor while retaining the look of your coolest gear, letting you pick how your version of Rook looks without sacrificing any stats.
I think I can manage that.
Party members are also actually helpful. They're unable to die or be downed in regular combat, which makes fights a lot less frustrating on the higher difficulties, and you can pretty much leave them to their own devices as they'll take care of their own problems, and you'll never have to worry about them idling on one side of the area while you're getting overwhelmed by demons on the other. That said, combat can get a bit repetitive. Given that the game's world and lore are both expansive, you'd think you'd be facing a wider variety of fodder enemies in combat, but you'll really only be fighting against a handful of different factions of humans and monsters. Don't get me wrong, the fights are still fun, the active combat and new abilities keep things engaging, and the lack of a massive variety of foes isn't something I'm totally bothered by, but I would have liked to have seen a bit more variety with the enemy encounters.
But to be clear, it was accurate.
The world of the Veilguard looks pretty great overall, especially in fidelity mode, but I have to say that the characters can look a bit too waxy at times. Part of it is the art style that was chosen for the game, but it would have been nice to have seen some more texture on the characters' faces, especially given how gritty the world they inhabit is. Hair clipping is also a constant issue, especially with characters who have longer hair like Lucanus or my version of Rook, but it's not like these things are deal breakers. Don't get me wrong, they're noticeable for sure, especially if you're playing around in photo mode or paying closer attention to their faces during conversations, but it doesn't take away from the game's immersion by any means.
It's not perfect, but count your wins.
At launch, the game was riddled with technical issues, long load times, crashes, as well as progression bugs that made it feel unfinished. Thankfully, BioWare has rolled out multiple patches in the past few months to fix the major issues, and the Veilguard is in a much better place now. There's still the occasional minor visual bug here and there, but nothing that detracts from the overall experience, and definitely nothing that breaks the game.
Words easily said, but rarely proven.
If you are encountering issues, you can try switching the game out of fidelity mode into performance mode, but at this point, I'd be surprised if you were having problems, which is pretty refreshing as, given the game's complexity and the number of mechanics at play, there's a lot of potential for issues to crop up, and personally, I didn't experience anything of concern.
Well, isn't that a surprise?
For newcomers to the Dragon Age franchise like myself, the Veilguard is simply a fun RPG with familiar elements. It's not a groundbreaking title and definitely has a few issues here and there, but it's solid enough for fans of the RPG and fantasy genres that I'd be hard-pressed not to recommend it.
He's fun! You're never fun.
Longtime Dragon Age fans might be disappointed by the more accessible, character-focused narrative, as well as with the changes to the combat system and the shift from the game's original premise. However, I still think it's a solid game that's at least worth checking out, or maybe even sinking a few dozen hours into like I have.
Only one way to find out.
As always though, this is just my opinion. Whether you're just starting to put your party together, or you've already dealt with Elgar'nan and Gillenane, let me know in the comments what you think of Dragon Age the Veilguard.
The crows send their regards.
Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.
I am the right hand of Zara. You will fall.